Om Shanti. Yeah, I hope so too. So we'll start with a little reflection. I bring into my mind's eye the image of a grand piano at the edge of a cliff that overlooks the ocean. And just, it seems, by sheer force of nature, that piano is tipped over the edge, falling off the cliff, gaining speed, falling quicker and quicker. And then it hits the ocean. And as it starts to drop into the water, it starts to slow down, slowing down until it's floating. That heavy piano, completely light, and then coming to a state of rest. Very often we come into the mode of just doing and doing and doing, racing through the day. But that feeling, as I go into solitude, as I come into that ocean of peace, it begins to slow me down. Things that I thought were a priority seem less important. The racing of the mind slowing down. The feeling of starting to float. Letting go of the unnecessary. Internally feeling a change in the tempo of how my mind moves along. Until my mind becomes quiet, completely in this moment. And in the moment, my mind might experience what it was racing around to find. That calm, that clarity, that coolness. Om Shanti. So warm welcome again. And our topic, I believe, is timing. So this is obviously a term, again, that's borrowed from physical fitness, athletic pursuits, timing. Before I share whatever comes into the mind to share, love to hear from you. When you hear the word timing, what do you think that has to do with spirituality? Timing. He's not there. He was. Yeah. So a reminder that we are recording, but if you want to chat or if you're comfortable to speak, What do you think timing has to do with spirituality, if anything? I'm happy to give you time to talk about timing. Yes, Hema, I agree with you. I. Did you want to add on to that?
I could say something, Sister
Good. Go ahead,
Judy.
Raj. And
I
then
don't know, my statement isn't, it's kind
Mhm.
of raw, I would say. Timing in general life is pretty much everything,
Mhm.
whether you get success or not or whatever.
Mhm.
Timing plays a big part of that, I would say. Kind of similar thing in spirituality as well.
Mm.
It's kind of, you could be listening to the knowledge for a long time, but at what point it kind of hits you in a good way hard that, that you're ready to make the change or make
Mm.
the shift in
Mm.
yourself. So
Mm.
that timing is predetermined or destined. So, but that's all I could think of.
Yeah, no, we even have a saying, timing is everything, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, we have here from Hema, certain things have to happen at certain times. And tide and time. I know this saying, time and tide. Certain things have to happen at certain times. Time and tide do not wait for anyone. I think I got that right. Hmm. Hopefully. Thank you, Emma. There was a very welcome, Dolan. There was a very, just to let you know, Dolan, we are recording. So feel free if you ever want to write anything in chat, if you're more comfortable with that. There is a very nice story that was told recently in one of the many online things happening out there. And it had to do with the former, actually, it's now two uh, spiritual leaders ago, Dadi Prakashmani. So she was just before Dadi Janki. And I've heard stories of this a few times where, someone would be coming to speak to her and they'd have maybe some kind of, I don't know if grievance or complaint is the right word, but they were uncomfortable or concerned or disturbed about something. And they would come to speak to her and share their feelings, their opinions. And often there might be an interpreter there. So there's a witness to this conversation. Sometimes they would just, Daddy wouldn't really seem to be saying much. They just were kind of firing things at her. And, she really would listen, sincerely listen, and wouldn't say much to, if you will, defend or explain, just really listen. And sometimes she might even say, I'm sorry, even though the one translating would clearly feel they could see that Daddy had nothing to be sorry about. But then time would pass and the soul, definitely felt like they had been heard, which was important. Some time would pass and then it would be said, at the right time, Daddy could have what's called a heart to heart chit chat with that soul. Something had melted by just saying, I'm sorry. And again, how time can heal. And in a later time, they could have a heart to heart chit chat rather than the soul just sort of firing at Daddy. They could have a conversation. And Daddy, who had so much experience, really having gone through all of it herself, was able to share that wealth of experience with the soul. They were open. And they'd say, to have such good timing so that you didn't shut the soul down, but was able to wait until that time was right for the soul to progress. And if there's anyone who I feel is a master of timing, it's God. Absolute master of timing. We have our own ideas of when things should happen and how. And what do you think our ideas are of when things should happen? Now or yesterday? We want everything now or yesterday. Unless it's something we're afraid of, then we say never. I laughed because before coming here, there was a window that popped up on the computer about some, I don't know, virus scan. You know, these scheduled things that happen with a restart. And it said, you know, it's time for you to do this, have a scan, and then you have some choices. Would you like to do it now? Would you like to be reminded in 1 hour? Would you like to be reminded in a day? Or the last choice was not in this century. I was very tempted to click because it's so interfering, right? So it made me laugh. But it's all about, you know, these questions on timing. But to have the right timing requires massive, massive power and clarity and contentment. In short, a lot of purity to have the right timing. And I've always appreciated this idea of, you know, that healing takes time. So we are especially impatient because of the force of what we've come to call the vices. So if I'm very attached to an outcome, attached to a certain change happening, attached to how things I want to go, I want it to happen now. If I have desires or I'm discontent, I want it to change now. So there's this, you know, of egos like I want this it to be this way now. So there's a lot of pressure that can happen in the soul, and it's just the pressure, the force of the vices. And when you come into a spiritual study, it's, you know, we sometimes call it a journey of healing. And this idea of healing, it is a patient that heals. So there's such a need for patience. But when we think of patience, sometimes we feel that it means nothing is going on. And when we say patience on the spiritual journey, I actually have to constantly use time in such a way, constantly pay attention that I'm applying the method. But the method itself, because it has such longevity, it's not a quick fix. The method itself takes time to really, really have results as long as it's applied consistently. So you can think of a medication where you're told it's going to take a little bit of time, but keep taking the medication or it will never happen. And I know I recently, you know, it was quite interesting where I was asked to take a medication and I was told, okay, in the first few weeks, it's going to get worse. I'm like, oh, that's great. In the first few weeks, it will get worse and then it will slowly start to get better. And it turns out the deeper the damage, it can be the longer, but the method must be applied the whole time or nothing is going to happen. And we are so, because of the force of the vices, we want results so quickly, you know, that sometimes we abort. So I know that Raj was talking about, you know, it can be a little while. I'm constantly exposing myself to the knowledge, constantly study, but the penny's going to drop in its own time, right? Because it's just this journey of quite deep change. So sometimes we try to force the change. You know, yes, I'm going to look spiritual. I'm going to act spiritual because I so want to be spiritual. And so we're looking for a superficial result. But when there's such, spirituality is looking at such a deep transformation, I need to apply the method, but give it time for those true or authentic results, not forced or false, but true, authentic results. And, you see this so much in physical fitness. We have people come in at a certain time of the year. They say now that September is the new January, but they come in at certain times of the year, whether it's September or January, and they have so much determination, right? I am going to ... quit smoking, lose weight, become strong, whatever the case may be. So they have so much determination and they put so much, they invest so much. And I can't tell you how many times you go into the back end of the computer system and you see memberships bought on January 2nd, whatever the case. And then you check the number of times that they have attended and you will literally see some where it was never. They came in and bought it and never used it. So it's this idea of just the idea of wanting a membership is going to make me healthy, but going through the journey. And when souls do that, the next thing you watch is you've got souls who have been leading very sedentary lives for a long period, and they come in and they do crazy stuff as if it's all going to happen in one visit. And then we don't see them again because they've injured themselves or they've, totally destroyed their body. And then you see the smart ones who educate themselves. What do I need to do for this to become a lifestyle, a way of life? They really educate them. They go in, they inform themselves, and they get quite specific, and they give themselves time. They have a plan that's spaced out over the rest of their life. They know what they're getting into, and they get lots of support. So they're investing that time, they're using that time, knowing. So this idea of patience and healing isn't that I'm doing nothing, but that I'm applying the right method. I have to make sure I have the right method over a long period of time to allow that healing, the results to happen. And that means at the end of the day, I have to enjoy what I'm doing. It's not, I'm just going to say, oh, okay, I'm going to do this Raj Yoga and grit my teeth the whole time. I hate it, but I know there comes a point where I actually enjoy the journey. I actually enjoy. And we've noticed that for those who actually enjoy movement, enjoy the new diet, those ones, it becomes for life. It's so easy, right? So then, of course, they naturally extend it over the period of time because it's now a choice, a lifestyle. So one concept I feel of timing is, to allow time, to use time in a worthwhile way, be very deliberate in my use of time, but also patient. Know that it will be over a long period of time. And I enjoy what I'm doing so it doesn't feel like a long period of time. It feels like every moment I'm getting an internal return because I enjoy. That's one concept of time that I find really, really important. I remember in physical fitness as well, especially something like relay, some of these sports, but relay comes to mind. Timing was so important. And, we have something in relay when you pass the baton called the transition zone. And, we would practice and practice our timing, our coach. I mean, we don't have to practice sprinting, it's just run fast. But those transitions, the handoff of the baton, I can't tell you for how long. We'd be exhausted as if we'd run a marathon because we'd practice over and over and over, just the transition. Because the timing was so critical. You don't want to lose seconds because you have bad timing. And so you really had to know the situation so well. So the runner If I was running fourth leg, third leg runners coming in with baton, and she'd have to have such a good sense of timing to be able to yell go to me at the perfect time so I can take off as fast as I can and not leave her in my dust still holding the baton. So what you would see, and we were joking the other day, I don't think it's this way anymore, but way back in the Stone Age, there was one particular country that the way they designed their relay team was they decided it just before the race. And they would see how the different, because it's basically 4 100-meter sprints put together. So they would select their runners for their relay race, especially the last leg, according to who ran the fastest 100-meter race. So they never had time to practice their handoffs. They were just, the team was thrown together at the last second by the fastest runners. And they were notorious for some of the worst timed passes you've ever seen in existence. And it never made sense to me because they're losing so much precious time with this arrogance. But anyway, so you'd see things where either, they take off too early. So this poor runner coming in can't catch him. So he'd actually have to stop just before he left the transition zone for the baton to come to him, and then he'd have to take off again. Or my favorite, he didn't take off early enough, and they just crash into each other. And they literally just kind of smush the baton, and they just crash into each other. So it always struck me how critical timing is, and how arrogance and other forces can totally muck up our timing. And what makes someone sensitive to the right time? Time is timing. Those types of things are such an important part of decision making. And decision making is about karma, and karma is about creating consequences. So if I do something prematurely, I could create a complete disaster. And if I do something too late, I also can create a complete disaster, missed opportunity. How to do things at the perfect time. What is required to do things at the accurate time? And we say accurate when there can be most benefit. What is required to do things at the accurate time? Any thoughts? So we have one vote for patience. Consistency. So now, sorry, we switched from relay to spirituality. I hope you know that. The accurate time. Perseverance. Discernment from Hema, discernment. Accuracy. You need accuracy to do things at the accurate time. Absolutely. Yeah. See, preparation. Very nice. Preparation. There's a wonderful story I know Linda used to share about preparation. I don't know, is it someone cutting down a cherry tree? I'm never sure if I got this right, but there's a famous concept that someone who, is very clear about, sensible, how they use their time. They don't rush. They use 95, if they're going to cut down a tree, 95% of the time sharpening the axe. So very little is required to actually cut the tree down. Good use of time. Now, for 95% of the time, it doesn't look like they're doing anything except sharpening that axe. But that preparation is a huge, huge part. Really good idea. Huge part of what is going to create an accurate or benevolent outcome. There was a program a long time ago. I think it's still happening under a different umbrella, Images and Voices of Hope, but the Brahma Kumaris was and I think they still are a partner in this organization, Images and Voices of Hope, and they had a program in Halifax, and it was at Pier 21, very significant venue, And they didn't know who would show up. It was just open to the community. So souls could come, and they were asked to go choose a group, a medium that really spoke to them. So it might be poetry or spoken word. It might be visual arts. It might be dancing. It might be music. It might be acting. It might be singing. They had facilitators who had expertise in these different modalities facilitating each of the groups. And they didn't know who would show up, and everyone just went to their group wherever they felt. They didn't know how many would be in each group, nothing. And once they got to their group, they had to, as a group, using that modality, create an experience of hope. Images and voices of hope, create an experience of hope using their modality. So if they're in the visual art group, they're not going to use spoken word, they're just going to use art to create that experience as a group. So you've got these people that are suddenly thrown together, and they just have a few hours to do this. I think it was, 1-2 hours maybe. And at the end, they're going to present to each other, to the whole public, their presentation. And we had a BK who was sharing their experience of being in the movement group, the dance group. And again, these people may not be dancers, they're just pulled to do it through movement. And so they sat down, and this is around preparation. They sat down together and started to really go deeply into exploring these experiences and feelings of hope and what it means to them. And again, they're the movement group, and they're going to have to prepare something at the end. And people from the other groups would sometimes look over to the movement groups. What are they? They're not even moving. They're not even rehearsing. Like, how are they ever going to be ready? And so they're like just half an hour before they have to present, and they're still kind of sitting on the ground talking and doing I don't know what. And the facilitator knew exactly what they were doing. They were doing that preparation, how they use the time. They were doing that preparation, the right timing, and really feeling, let's lay the foundation inside, then the expression will be natural. It won't be contrived. It will come naturally. If it's so deep, the feeling so deep inside the souls. And what they chose to do as a group is that they would stand up. They only lose the last few minutes to stand up, figure out where everyone would stand, create their configuration. But they had been asked to go inside and really see what quality was connected to a world of hope, of giving hope to the world, what quality, and to go inside and deeply, deeply experience it. So if someone said peace, experience it till you feel it, until you become it. And they were told, when it comes time, each of you in turn, the facilitator will just say peace, and it will cue that person who had chosen peace to do their movement. And their movement might be whatever felt like peace. That was the whole movement piece, is that they each did their movement as they felt it, experienced it. Because they went so deeply into the feeling, it came out very naturally. And people said, my gosh, that was beautiful. And said, we don't know how you did it because you didn't rehearse, we didn't see you moving. And yet this presentation was so beautiful because of that deep internal preparation. And I am a huge fan of taking the time to build a very good foundation. When we look at the beginning of the Brahma Kumaris, they dedicated 14 years to just working on themselves. Someone looking at the organization, they're doing nothing. 14 years of going deep inside and laying a very strong foundation. And I believe that is the reason that we are sitting here today. That's the reason the organization continues to survive, despite being an organization that never charges for anything it should have, despite being an organization that their original leader passed away long ago. All of the reasons an organization should not survive, it continues, despite being an organization run by women, it just continues to keep going because its roots are so deep. It took time to plant deep roots. And that preparation is connected to the quality of discernment that was brought up as well. I think Hema brought up to be able to discern, to see, to have that sense that if I take the time to prepare, to create a foundation, to align, then whatever is put on that foundation will be powerful, will be benevolent, will be accurate, will be useful if I take the time to prepare that foundation before adding any movement or activity or decisions. In fact, it's often said that if you're in a very irritated and angry state, that is not the good time to make a decision. And sadly, that's often when people find they need to make a decision, is in a crisis. Decisions should always be made at times of clarity when one is peaceful and calm. So a good use of time if I'm facing a major decision isn't actually to focus on the decision. A good use of time is to prepare my inner environment so it can really usefully reflect on it. Take the time to step away from thinking about it. And I know this is a challenge for people, but to not actually think about it at all and just go into that very calm, clear, peaceful place. And of course, what do I need to do? I need to start to consider myself a soul, to detach. It's going to give me a bit of buffer, a bit of detachment from the situation, just the effort of going into that headspace. And then when I actually look at it, I will be in a completely different perspective. I remember before coming into this study, I loved physically, I love to stretch. I love to stretch and relax and sort of restore the body. And I still do to this day. I will always allow time, 30 minutes at the end to stretch on my own. But what I noticed when I was very young is I might go to do a fitness class and, have something heavy, a situation or decision on my mind. And yeah, jumping around certainly distracts me from thinking about it because I'm just trying to stay alive, but it's still there. What actually was really useful was the stretch after, because there was something so calming about that stretch. It took me, and I'm not saying you need to stretch to, I mean, that's what our reflection allows us to do. We don't need to stretch, but before coming into this practice, intuitively, I found this happen, that something calming that took me into a calm place. And suddenly it was like I'd have so much clarity and perspective. Things that I thought were huge, I suddenly realized weren't big at all. In fact, half the time it's like, oh, I don't think we need to do anything right now. So it's amazing how that preparation, that foundation, enhances my capacity. It's very discerning and sensible. It enhances my capacity to see the situation differently in terms of decisions, or even how I feel about it. So how I use the time. And I know we have the practice in this study that it's just a habit at this point that we start meetings, everything, with a moment of silence. Now, some don't because they just want to get to the issue. But I've always found that silence is absolutely essential. Everything's happening in that silence. That silence is preparation for a really useful meeting. If everyone, is on board to use the silence, not to think about their own agendas, not to think about me, just to go into a quiet place. That has nothing to do with the meeting. Just go into a quiet place. And then it's amazing how that kind of foundation changes everything, how everything unfolds. I myself have been in situations where I have no idea how I'm going to get through them. They just seem way over my head. How will I use the time before? How will I prepare? And more I'm finding I don't want to think about it at all. Because when I do, all the vices decide to come in and make it crazy. I just, you know what? I'm just going to do a couple of things. I'm going to remember the big picture, that I'm a soul. I'm also going to very much connect to God and really kind of use him as a support, hand it over. And that's the whole preparation, so that when we bring ourselves into a calm place, which is our true nature, we can operate at our best. And so using our time to create that kind of foundation is so important. I think it's connected to the idea of patience that Nora brought up, because again, we want to rush in and, make things happen. But if I could just use even a second to align before rushing in, it can make such a difference. When I was doing first aid training, I had an excellent trainer for many years, every year to research. And out of all the things he taught me, this always stayed with me. And he'd say, when you arrived at the scene of an event, take a moment to do nothing. And it's very challenging. And I never actually passed on this point when things actually happened until I came to Raj Yoga. But take a moment to just calm yourself down, because you will operate much better if you do. And I remember going when situations actually came, for example, you're supposed to put PPE on. That wouldn't happen. I would just rush in there to help. Of course, I'm getting contaminated. So, but I remember that. And I remember whenever EMS would come to respond, I always found it fascinating because it was ingrained in them. And, if I was the one who was going to meet them at the door to take them to the event, I always found it that was the best part of the whole thing. Because I'd meet them at the door and they'd be like, hi, how's it going? We've got someone in distress in the building. They're just like, how's it going? And I'd be like, fine. He says, so what's going on? So they have all the time. Well, we've got someone unconscious. And then they say, oh, really? What? They just had this composure as they made their way to the scene that I found was such wonderful preparation for them to be completely useful at that scene. It requires incredible, you can say, patience or self-control to do that. But if I start to experiment and see the benefits of it, then it'll just become my go-to. I'll want to do it. And we see that so much with the seniors. Very often we'll go and say, oh, I've got this critical situation. I need an answer yesterday. And they'll listen and say, come back tomorrow. I'm sorry, I need an answer now. Come back tomorrow. And they say, in the meantime, go sit in the meditation room. And of course, that was their wisdom, because as you're sitting there, you start to get clarity about what's going on. And when you go back tomorrow, it's a beautiful conversation of being able to share ideas, discuss ideas. So this idea of using timing, to gain accuracy in decision making, and even just how I view a situation, is to just cool the self down, calm the self down, using the ideas of Raj Yoga, that I am a soul, that everyone's an actor, everything's accurate, to just start to free ourselves from the force of the vices that want us to do things in crazy time, right? That really want us to do crazy stuff and react. And then what have we created? So I'm going to stop there and see if there's anything anyone wants to share at this point. Again, reminding you that we are recording. So if you want to chat in the box, that's fine too. All right, I'm going to repeat a question that's coming. Maybe it's obvious, but what's that fine line between patience and avoidance, or patience and escape, or patience and hiding my head in the sand? And, again, I think that all of those escape, avoidance, hiding are in the category of I'm not doing anything, but I'm calling it patience. Because the patience that we're talking about is I'm actually deliberately applying a method. I'm not avoiding or escaping. I'm applying a method, understanding that the method I'm applying takes time to produce any visible results. So, it's a bit like someone who plants a garden. They're out there planting seeds. It's not that they're escaping or avoiding or doing nothing. They are doing something. It's completely incognito, right? And it's going to take time. So I have to check, am I still applying the method? Am I still considering myself to be a soul? Am I still remembering the Supreme Soul? Am I still applying the method? Because if I am, it's definitely not going to be escaping, avoiding, or doing nothing. That kind of work will inspire action, but accurate action. And that action might be, let's wait a moment, but it won't be avoidance or escape. It'll be wisdom, right? It'll be wisdom as in, let's not push this. Quite frankly, sometimes trying to, people are out there distracting themselves all the time and seeming to be very busy, and they are avoiding and escaping. So it's a very inner check the method, right? Is there soul consciousness? Is there self-respect? Is there God consciousness? Is there power? Check, because that, if it's accurately happening, it will absolutely inspire some kind of decision, some kind of action that can help to move things forward. So I don't want to just look at the surface. The reason I say that is very often seniors have been accused of this. They're not doing anything. They're not facing the situation. And in my heart, I know they are. They're just not doing what we want. So I could have the vices working and it looks like I'm doing stuff. It looks like things are happening. But in fact, I'm avoiding facing the root issue. So it requires a lot of inner observation to see what's driving me. And, I think as we develop more, as we get healthier and healthier, we can become sensitive to when I am, there'll be someone said the other day, I liked it, anxiety. Anxiety comes with escaping or avoiding because it's what's promoting that. There's this anxiety. This anxiety is based in, I know we had the talk on honesty. Anxiety is based in, I'm not being honest. I'm lying to myself in some way. It creates this, and we don't articulate it, we rationalize it, but the rationalization doesn't quite work because there's still that low-grade anxiety. Someone who has a clean heart, who faces, who's honest, they do not have low-grade anxiety, right? They don't have, so they don't have to distract themselves. So it's going in there and learning more about myself, which is such a good use of time as well. Sometimes we're very outcome oriented and we miss a lot of important opportunities to see what drives us, what's behind our activity. We just want results. And it's again, what's the use of my time? Right? It isn't a waste of time. I think, in physical fitness, I always feel, when someone's doing a move and it's a little wonky, the go-to is always not to progress the move to a more advanced version. You never do that. You always break it down to a lower progression, if you will, so that you can understand. And some say, but I'm not advancing. It's like you are advancing. By breaking it down, we get a chance to see what actually is going on, so then you can move forward in a healthy way. So it's not a waste of time to go back to basics, right? If I get to discover what's the underpinnings, it's not a waste of time. So I just have to look inside. And yes, honesty is sometimes a weakness in us, in terms of honesty with the self. We're not talking about expressions of honesty now. We're just being able to have clarity with what's going on, what's driving me, what's happening inside. That to me is the only honesty that matters, actually. And it's a good use of time to cultivate an honest relationship with the self. Really good use of time. It's not going to be showy. It might look like you're going backwards. I'm thinking a lot about a sister who, a senior sister, she was with Daddy for a very, very long time, Daddy Janki. And honesty was a huge thing for her. And you can feel it. She's just always, I've always felt that. And there's times when she's done things that looks like she's going backwards or sideways, but it's just, you don't feel it at all. You feel that she's taking the time to face things inside. What are we trying to avoid or escape? It's always something inside. We might say, no, I'm avoiding that issue. Well, I'm avoiding that issue because it makes me uncomfortable inside. So it's triggering something inside. I'm glad to be put in that situation because now I know there's a button inside and I get to be more honest. I didn't know it was there before. So now I have a more honest chance with myself. So it's always going back to that clarity inside. Anyone else want to share? Is there more to your question? I don't know if it went anywhere, but we're good. We're okay. We're deep in thought. We fell asleep. The last little piece about timing, which I think Raj was touching on, when I was quite young, sometimes people would compare me to an avocado. And an avocado plant takes a long time before any fruit appears. But when it does, it's pretty substantial. But for a long time, it doesn't seem like much is going on. And we all have different parts. We all have different parts. And so I am not a fan of forcing souls, pushing souls or anything. To really respect, we all have different parts. We all have different timings. Today I had a horrible experience where I'm in a class and they'd never done this before and it kind of shocked us all. It was an outdoor class. And then towards the end, when you have no energy left, they said, okay, everybody, let's run around the block. And it's a big city block, right? This isn't a song. Let's run around the block. And for me, we're all confused, like, what? And I found it really interesting because people who were in the class doing interval training and really crazy, really strong, the moment they started to run, it took them a really long time. And other people who perhaps weren't so strong in the interval training, the moment they started to run, it was their thing and they took off like a gazelle. And then there's Judy just trying to stay alive. And I'm pretty clear about my capacity to run long distances. It's not good. But a part of me was just preoccupied with this observation of just the wonder of each one's part. And everyone's got different timing. And this is really how things work in a drama on a stage, is every actor has to come onto the stage and play their part at their time. If they do it at the wrong time, it throws everybody off. And so to have that respect for timing, that is respect for other souls' timing. Sometimes we have a lot of expectations. When are they going to do this? Why aren't they doing this yet? They've been here forever. And to really respect each one's timing, to respect your own timing, to not compare yourself with anyone. As long as, again, I'm honestly applying the method, it will produce results at some time, at my time, right? The time that it's supposed to for me. I just have to check, how am I using the time? Am I honestly applying the method? So this respect for each one's part, respect for each one's timing, respect for my own. Some are sprinters and some are marathon runners. And I remember there was one race I had to run every year, and it was just grown. I'd always land up in the finals with the same soul. And we didn't know at the time when she was that age, it wasn't known that she's actually a 400-meter runner. So she was put into short track, 100, 200. Me, I was like a 50-meter runner. So we would be up against each other in the 200-meter race, which is the longest that I could run. And if anyone has done 400 and know 400, they're sprinting all the way around, but they have this incredible ability to actually pick up speed as they get into the race. It's remarkable. I can't imagine doing that. Whereas for me as a sprinter, I've only got so much in the tank. And after that, it's game over. So what would happen classically every year, it was so depressing, is Judy'd be in front 50 meters, 100 meters, and then always at the 150 mark, I'd hear her coming. I'm 50 meters from the finish line, and there's not a thing I do because I just ran out of fuel. It's not my thing. Whereas, and it always fascinated me. I knew it was going to happen. And it wasn't just a mental thing. We have very different parts. And I had a real respect for her. It was pretty clear, wow, she is a powerhouse to be picking up speed at 150. And I knew my part. And eventually was able to say, you know what? The 200-meter, it's interesting, but it's really not my. So really to respect how you have to be honest. So this isn't escape or avoidance, but me applying the method accurately, it will produce results, but according to my part, according to my timing. So I'm going to end there, looking at the time. Last chance, if anyone wants to share anything, if it's their time to speak. This is it before we run out of time. Otherwise, we'll have a final reflection. We're okay? Great. I go inside into this place that actually feels beyond any sense of time. A very free place inside where my racing mind can stop running and catch its breath, where my entire being can stop doing and assess what's going on in my inner world, what's going on inside of me. Before I move back into time, let me take this timeless moment to decide, how do I want to use time? Where do I need to place my attention or care to help me grow spiritually? Not just to blindly keep moving along, but how do I want to use the next moment? Sometimes slowing down to check in can actually help me to move ahead faster. Om Shanti. Thank you so much for joining today. I have no idea what the topic is next week because we are yet to set our October calendar, but I'll ask, is there any requests? Okay, then you're at the mercy of whatever we come up with. Until we meet again, thank you so much for joining, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Om Shanti. Om Shanti.